Hello and welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. I want to do a very short prelude as to why I haven't uploaded my May wrap-up yet. It's the 17th today, I think, and I still haven't uploaded the May wrap-up because I was struck by another bout of laryngitis. Unfortunately, I think it's the third time this year, which absolutely sucks because I tend to lose my voice whenever I have laryngitis. And it kind of hinders me and in all the ways possible. I can't speak, I can't record. The only thing that I do is basically work and read. So that's what I've been doing in the month of June, which does mean that I'm going to have probably a quite good reading month. But yeah, it just sucks. So in the past week I haven't been able to talk at all, so now you're going to be hearing me on this video speaking about quite a few books, because there's quite a few that I love. There's quite a few that I was really looking forward to reading in the month of May. And without further ado, let's just dive into the May wrap up so I can tell you a little bit about those books. So the month of May has been quite a dynamic month for me because I went to visit my folks in Amsterdam. I was there for about 2.5 weeks, and I actually didn't get to read almost anything within 2.5 weeks because I was visiting them. I visited family and friends, and also just had some time off, frankly. So yeah, I thought that the month was not going to go well in terms of my reading stats or whatever, but I just didn't want to put my pressure on myself. So I was like, whatever happens, happens. But I still had quite a good reading month. I actually managed to finish 16 books. And I'm quite proud of myself, to be honest, because I managed to kind of mark off quite a few books that I had on my TBR for a very long time. And the first two books kind of reflect that. The first book is actually a reread. I don't do any rereads typically at all unless I need to read like a sequel, which is the case in this specific case. The book that I'm going to talk about is The Birthday List by Devney. I read this book back in 2018 and I gave it 5 stars, and now with a reread I gave it 5 stars again because it's a very special, intriguing, emotional story. The book centers around Poppy. This is my only negative remark. I don't like the name Poppy. I think it's overused in romances, and I don't like it. Anyway, just to make this statement, because I think I do it for every book that has this name on it. Anyway, so we have Poppy, who unfortunately has lost her husband, and her husband Jamie, he had this birthday list, which is kind of like a bucket list for what he wants to do on every single birthday. He wants to mark off specific activities. And now that he's been gone for about a year or so, Poppy decides that she wants to do the birthday list activity so that she can kind of feel close to him, but also to kind of wrap up her grieving process so that she can move on. And the first thing that she does off of the birthday list is go to a karate class where she meets Cole. And Cole is actually a police officer, and his interesting connection with Poppy is that he was actually the police officer who had the unfortunate responsibility of letting her know that her husband had passed away. So he had already an impression of her. He kind of was very impressed by the strength that she had shown when he broke the news to her. So he already was very he had some kind of involvement with her, kind of an emotional bond that he felt. And when he saw that she walked into his karate dojo, he was absolutely over the moon about it, and he enlists himself actually to help her finish the birthday list. And that's where we see their journey of doing all those activities together and kind of getting close in the process. I love the story. It's absolutely amazing. It tugs on all the right heartstrings, and it has actually an amazing plot as well, with amazingly developed characters, development of the characters, and also the side characters are amazing. That's why we also have a second book, thankfully, which I managed to pick up as well. It's called Letters to Molly, and it centers around Poppy's best friend Molly, who is actually also, she was married to Poppy's brother, Finn. They were married, they had 2 kids, but then they divorced because unfortunately Molly made the mistake of cheating on Finn. She had her reasons, but regardless, Finn couldn't get past the fact that she cheated on him, so he decided to get a divorce. And it's been years and years since their divorce. They already have kind of a routine going on with the kids, but Molly just hasn't moved on. She still loves Finn. Finn actually also loves her still, but he's still holding on to a grudge, and that's where their story kind of starts in Letters to Molly, and I loved it. I mean, I've mentioned it, I think, before in one of my previous videos, that I do appreciate a lot of love stories are centering around new couples, couples who kind of we see their honeymoon phase, how they meet, how they fall in love. I appreciate that, but I think that I appreciate more stories where we see people with developed relationships and how they get past obstacles, get past conflicts, and how they need to make compromises to make their relationships work, especially when they're married for a long time, or whenever kids are involved, or whenever there's really big things going on within their life which influences their relationship. So yeah, I appreciate that this is this kind of a story where we have a marriage in trouble essentially, and also a second chance romance, which are tropes that I absolutely adore within a book. So if you like those tropes, definitely pick this one up. So the next book I'm not going to talk about in length, honestly, because it was one of the most unimpressive books that I read in May. It's called Naughty Neighbor. I don't know who the author is. It's Lauren Runlow and Jeannine Colette. Those are 2 authors who wrote this book, and just to give you a short description, it was about a writer who was suffering from writer's block, and her neighbor, because of a chance encounter with him, he kind of enlists himself to help her get inspired to write again. And that's basically what the story is about. They have kind of a connection with each other, and he goes on dates with her so that she can kind of get into the mood of writing a romance book again. So he's kind of her muse. It was an okay book. I gave it 3 stars. It was nothing to write home about. And yeah, that's about all I can say about it. If you like books which center around a bookish theme, you can try it out to see if it works for you. For me, it was just an okay read. The next book that I picked up is a book that I had on my TBR since last year because I absolutely love Taylor Jenkins Reid. After I picked up Daisy Jones and the Six and The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I vowed that I want to kind of work through her backlist and read all of the books that I haven't picked up yet. So slowly but surely, I'm kind of working my way through the backlist of this author, and I read One True Loves. This book, I was kind of apprehensive about picking it up because it involves a love triangle, so be forewarned about this. If you haven't picked it up yet, look it up to see if it's going to be for you, because I didn't know for sure if it was going to be a book that I'm going to enjoy, because love triangles typically are not my jam, but I did like it. It was a 4-star read, a solid 4-star read, although I do have to say that the thing that typically doesn't work for me with love triangles is that either I get invested with the wrong character within the love triangle, and then I get disappointed, or I just don't connect with the love interest because there's 2 of them, and then I don't get invested in any of the 2, and I again get disappointed. In this situation, we have Emma, who meets the love of her life, Jesse. I think they're in college, and then they fall in love, they get married, they travel the world together because of their careers. But then on their first anniversary, Jesse goes on this trip to Alaska and he disappears. So yeah, basically he's pronounced dead after a certain amount of time, and Emma needs to go ahead and pick up the pieces of her heart and see how she's going to move forward. This is where a person from her past, Sam, a friend of hers who had always had interest in dating her, but then she fell in love with Jesse. He always had an interest in her, so he kind of came back into her life, and then they start a relationship with each other, and they get engaged after a certain amount of time. But when they get engaged, lo and behold, Jesse comes back into the picture. They find him, and she basically needs to see how it's going to work out now that she has a husband who has reappeared and a fiance who obviously is in a very disadvantageous situation because he's in love with his fiance, but she is also probably or possibly in love still with her husband. It's an emotional story. It has a lot of things going on within it, and I did appreciate that it was very beautifully crafted, and it was not um, done in a kind of a, how do you say it? In Bulgarian, there is a beautiful word that I don't know how you say it in English. It wasn't like distastefully made, if you know what I'm saying. The love triangle wasn't made in any way where we see the heroine taking advantage of the situation. She was really feeling horrible towards her fiance, but also she was feeling like she needed to give a chance to whatever was still alive within her marriage. So she was very conflicted. Everyone was very conflicted within the scenario, and I did sense how the story would progress. This is why I didn't give it 5 stars. There wasn't a wow factor for me within the book in the end, but I did appreciate what was done within it, so I gave it 4 stars. It's definitely worth the read. It wasn't my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book, but I do appreciate it for what it was. So because in the month of April I read those quite a few dark themed romance books, age gap taboo books, and especially the ones that I read by Sierra Simone. What was it? The American Queen, King, and Prince. I thought, like, I think I have something on my TBR that resembles this series that I want to pick up next. And I found it. It's The Initiation, and then The Obsession, The Deception, and The Redemption by Nikki Sloane. I picked those books up and I read them in a binge. I did like them. Maybe similarly to Sierra Simone's books, I think I gave them overall 3.5 stars, and in this situation I also think I'm going to stick with a rating of overall 3.5 stars for all of the books. But the first one, to be honest, is my least favorite out of the 4. We follow within the book Marist, who is from this well-off family, and her family has pledged that one of the sisters, in the specific situation, not Marist, but her older sister, Emmeline or Amabel, or I don't know what her name is supposed to marry this rich guy, Royce Hill, from this huge, amazingly wealthy, very powerful family. But she doesn't want to marry him, so she kind of goes through a loophole to get out of that situation, and that's why Maris needs to take her place and marry Royce Hill, because the family has pledged one of the sisters to marry him. Now, Marist goes on about doing this, and while she's very fascinated by Royce, she's also kind of a bit afraid about going into that family, because she's heard a lot about things not being very kosher within that family. So she's kind of afraid of what she's getting into, especially because she hears that she needs to undergo an initiation, which I'm not going to spoil for you to let you know what it is specifically, but she needs to undergo this ritual to be a part of the family. So yeah, this is where the dark themes within, or the dark taboo romance themes come within the book. There's a lot of interesting spicy times within those books. There is a love triangle involved, there is an age gap involved in the second, third book, etc. And yeah, a lot happens between Marist and Royce. A lot happens between Marist and Royce's dad, McAllister. And I'm going to be honest, the thing that didn't work for me the most is that at some point, actually quite a bit early on in the start of the series, I was already rooting for Marist not to get with Royce, but with McAllister, which is not a good sign for those two lovebirds. So yeah, I did like the series, but it wasn't a favorite of mine. I do recommend it. It's a good time to get through, and it's a bingeable series for sure. But yeah, it kind of left me feeling like I'm on a roller coaster and I'm not sure which ride I want to take and where I want to get on and where I want to get off. So if you get my drift, I wasn't exactly sure who I should be rooting for. So yeah, that's my main kind of concern about those series. But yeah, there were a lot of fun. Next up, I'm going to talk about Christina Lauren's Something Wilder. If you've seen my most anticipated reads video, you will know that this was high up on the list because it sounded like something that's right up my alley. It's a second chance romance out in the adventurous kind of setting. We have a treasure hunt, and we have the guaranteed Christina Lauren funny moments and banter that we can expect. So I thought this was guaranteed a 4 or 5 star read for me, but unfortunately it fell flat for me. I did give it like 3.5, 4 stars, but I really had high hopes to get a bit more out of it, to be honest, and I didn't. There were some things that kind of bugged me within the plot, some kind of situations where it felt a bit childish or a bit not very well thought out of how the treasure hunt scenario progressed. And also, the treasure hunt kind of was in the spotlight, and the romance took a backburn to the whole situation with the treasure hunt, which kind of impacted my enjoyment of the book. So yeah, I had high hopes for it, but unfortunately, the expectations were not met. So this is probably going to be a disappointment for me for this year, unfortunately. And yeah, check it out. I don't know if it will work for you. Unfortunately, it didn't work out as well for me as I hoped. And we'll see how the next Christina Lauren story will work out for me. They're kind of hit and miss, to be honest. Next up, I picked up a duet by Crownover. I haven't picked up anything by this author before, and I think that this book is written actually by Crownover and Rebecca Yarros. And the duet is called A Girl in Love and then A Boy in Love. And it centers around the girl, Langley, who is kind of in a scenario from hell. She's in a predicament because she needs to attend a wedding, the wedding of her stepsister, who is marrying Langley's ex. And obviously, this is not an ideal situation for her. She wants to find a guy to go to the wedding with, a date for herself, who is everything that is not expected of her in terms of a date. She kind of wants to go with the bad boy, tattooed guy, someone who doesn't fit the picture of the picture perfect wedding that she's going to. And she goes to this bar to try and find the specific guy so she can make a proposition for what she has in mind. And this is where she finds Iker, who is in a predicament himself. He's in a situation where he can definitely benefit from the proposition that Langley proposes. So he agrees to go to the wedding with her. And this is where they get into a situation where they need to go to the rehearsal dinner, to the family barbecue before the wedding, and they have a couple of situations where they need to fake date. And feelings get involved, stuff happens, and I'm not going to spoil too much about it because there's also a second book where a lot happens after the wedding. So yeah, it was a very fun read. Quite a bit more emotional than I thought that it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be like a fun fake dating kind of type of book, but it was more than that, which I definitely appreciated. I gave both of the books 4 stars, and I definitely recommend them, especially the audiobooks. Those are really good. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm always the last one to know all the gossip. I'm very bad with following trends. I'm very bad with knowing anything that happens. I always am the last one to find out, basically. So when I found out that K.A. Tucker actually has a pen name, I was shocked. I mean, I was totally shocked, to be honest, because I absolutely love K.A. Tucker. I've read most of her backlist. And then I found out that she has other books written under another name. And I found out because my audio library uploaded those works, but they uploaded them as K.A. Tucker instead of Nina West, which is her pen name. So I went ahead and picked them up. The first one, at least I read in May. It's called Sweet Mercy. It's off of her Empire Nightclub series, I think it's called. And I loved it. I mean, it's not a wow read. I think that she has quite better books off of her backlist, but I think the ones that she writes under her pen name are considered more spicy, more steamy. So the one that I picked up, Sweet Mercy, I liked it. It was about a girl. Her name is Mercy. She is in a situation where her father is in prison because he murdered a guy who assaulted her. She's working towards trying to get him out of jail because he was not defended very well during the trial. And during one of her prison visits, she meets Gabriel, who is there visiting his own father, his respective father. But Gabriel is part of the Russian mob, so he is in a very different situation, but he's immediately captivated by Mercy and he definitely wants to pursue her. But she's not an idiot. She sees that there is something going on there, that he's kind of out of her league and that he's probably involved in some shady shit. So yeah, so she's kind of hesitant about getting involved with him. But then things happen. He offers her a proposal she cannot refuse. So basically, again, things happen. And it's a very dynamic book, a quick read. So I liked it, and I'm going to continue on with the series. And again, I'm shook that she has more books than what I've read before. So yeah. Next up, I picked up two companion novels by Kandi Steiner. The first one being The Wrong Game. The second one is The Right Player. Both of them I gave 4 stars. I enjoyed both of them, and they're centering around football. The second one a little bit more than the first one, maybe because the first one is not really considered a sports romance because none of the main characters are athletes. The first one is about what was her name? What was her name? I don't remember her name. Gemma. I have it in my notes. Gemma, who something happens. I cannot tell you what happens, so I don't spoil anything. But she is left with 2 season tickets for her favorite football team, the Bears. And she's wondering what she should do with the second ticket because her best friend does not like football at all. So her best friend, one night when they go out drinking in a bar, suggests that Gemma makes a dating profile for herself on an application, and she kind of filters out guys to take to those games so that she can at least have a bit of fun with them. Now, Gemma is considering this, but while she's considering this, the guy who is the bartender at the bar where they're drinking, he kind of overhears the situation and he volunteers as tribute to be the first person she takes to one of those games. And Gemma agrees. She takes Zach to one of those games and things progress from there. Now, the second book centers around Gemma's best friend, Belle, who, like I mentioned, doesn't like football at all. She hates it. She's an interior designer and she has a very successful business. Her love interest is called Makoa. He is a Hawaiian native who is a football player. He has recently been signed with the Bears and he moves over to, I think it's Chicago, to basically start playing with the team. Now, he enlists Belle's help to get her interior design ideas for his new place. He immediately is very attracted to her, but then he finds out that she does not like or date football players. So he's kind of in the predicament of how to pursue her, him being the football player that he is. Now, in the meantime, there's also another predicament where Belle is the type of girl who has a 3-date rule where she dates someone for 3 dates and then she breaks things off. While Makoa has again a 3-date rule, but he doesn't sleep with anyone within the first 3 dates because he actually wants to progress with a relationship in a more gradual way. So they have a bit of a predicament of how they're going to work that specific rule out. Both of the reads were fun reads. I love them. I gave them 4 stars and they're definitely worth the read. I wouldn't say that they have the wow factor, but they're still very enjoyable. So I definitely recommend you pick them up, especially if you like sports romances. The next book I picked up on a whim because I saw it in my audio library as a new release and I saw the cover. It was absolutely stunning in my opinion. So I was like, I'm not even going to find out what the story is about. I'm just going to try it out and see whether it's going to be for me. It's called Some Mistakes Were Made by Kristin Dwyer. This is a debut for this author, and what a stunning debut it was. I absolutely love this story. It's a YA contemporary, and I think it's more of a coming of age story than it is a romance, but there is definitely a romance involved. And I absolutely adored it. There is the right amount of drama, the right amount of angst, the right amount of romance, the right amount of conversations between young adults who are really in need of figuring out how to deal with certain situations. So yeah, it was amazing in my opinion. It was a definite 5-star read for me, and it's really actually the top 5-star read for me for the month of May. I just want to read out the blurb for this story that I found on Goodreads, because had I not seen that cover, if I had picked up the blurb from Goodreads, I still would have picked it up in a hot minute because it sounds so good when you read it out. What it says is, Alice and Easton have been inseparable since childhood. But when a rash decision throws Alice's life and her relationship with Easton into chaos, she is forced to move halfway across the country, far away from everything she's ever known. Now Alice hasn't spoken to Easton in a year, and maybe it's better that way. Maybe eventually the Easton-shaped hole in her heart will heal. But when Easton's mother invites her home for a celebration, Alice finds herself tangled up in a web of heartache, betrayal, and anger that she left behind. And with the boy she never stopped loving. I mean, how angsty does that sound? I don't know if you like angst in your stories, but I absolutely loved it. The type of suspense just is what I live for within those YA stories. And yeah, I recommend it with both hands. Please pick this one up. So when I was in Amsterdam, I picked up my copy for Booklovers by Emily Henry. If you've seen any type of video that I've made about what expectations I have for 2022, I've mentioned that this book is in my top predictions because I absolutely love Emily Henry's writing. I love not book lovers, but beach read and people we meet on vacation. So I had high hopes and high expectations for this book. I do have to say that I liked it, but unfortunately I didn't love it. I had some issues with it, to be honest. Let me tell you what this book is about. The book is about Nora, who is a literary agent, and she has an amazing relationship with her sister. They're really close with each other, and her sister is actually a very big fan of Nora's biggest client, Dusty, of her works. So Libby, her sister, decides to invite Nora to a sister's retreat because Libby is expecting her 3rd baby, and she's like, I need to get away before this 3rd baby comes popping out. And what better idea is there than to visit the small town which inspired this author Dusty to write one of her best-selling hits. So the 2 sisters go on a month-long vacation to this small town somewhere in North Carolina, I believe. Now, in that small town, Nora encounters time and time again a person from her bookish world, an editor called Charlie, and she had a chance encounter with him back in New York because of a work experience, and they didn't mesh very well when they met each other. So when she kind of meets him in this small town in the middle of nowhere, she's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" First of all, and then they kind of get stuck working together on Dusty's new release. So they have a lot of forced proximity, and there is kind of a dislike to lovers. I wouldn't call it enemies to lovers because they're not enemies, but kind of they have a frustrating relationship at the beginning, and then they work towards becoming actually friends and then lovers as well. What didn't work for me within this book is that really this book, I think, was marketed as an enemies to lovers story, and I don't buy it. It didn't work out that well for me, that specific trope. So when you build up specific expectations towards a book being a specific type of book, I thought that there was going to be some kind of a rivalry or some kind of an instance where something really bad happened and they're going to have really bad banter between them, like for example in the hating game, or a book similar to that where they're going to have like this push and pull. And this wasn't the case in this story at all. We actually have a pining hero within this story. Charlie has a very big respect for Nora, and as the story progresses, we find out that he is very inspired and impressed by her. So we kind of have a pining hero instead of an enemies to lovers dynamic. So it just kind of threw me off. I expected something completely different off of the story, and I didn't get that. That's why I gave it 4 stars. I think had I gone into the book completely blind, I would have given it 5 stars, but because my expectations were ruined, I don't think that I can give it 5 stars. And because I was kind of waiting for something to happen that kind of didn't happen. And also there was a lot of focus on the relationship between the 2 sisters, Nora and Libby, which worked well for the story, but at some point I was like, the romance is kind of taking a backseat here. So that kind of also grated on my nerves at times. And I do have to mention that there's great representation within the book, which I did like. But yeah, there's just some things that I wanted to have more within the story than, or maybe I just expected more out of it. So that's why I gave it 4 stars. This about wraps up all of the books that I read in the month of May. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you're planning to pick up any of the books that I discussed today. And if you've read any of the books that I discussed today, please let me know what you thought about them, especially if you've picked up Booklovers, because that one is very hyped up at the moment. I really want to know your opinions on it as well. So please let me know. If you can just drop down a comment below, or also DM me on Instagram, that's fine as well. Everything will be linked down below. Subscribe to my channel, like my video please, and I hope to see you very, very soon in my next video. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Take care, happy reading, and bye-bye.